Hey, Michelle here from thesoultranslator.com, and this is Translation Tuesday. So I wanted to jump in here and make a video for us to talk a little bit about what an empath is. There is a lot of talk out in social media, online. It seems like many people are beginning to wake up to this term, what is an empath, or being an empath. And so I wanted to talk about this a little bit here on Translation Tuesday in this video. Now, I do work as a professional empath and spiritual medium, and I have a background in clinical psychology and coaching and healing and quantum work and many different things, and have been in some sort of variation of spiritual mediumship or channeling or being a creative catalyst for information coming in for a couple decades. To clarify with you that I am an empath and also have been for a long time, and also my whole journey has been getting to this point that I got the clearer, like, oh my God, so that's what I am. And we all love to have moments like that, because it's like, you know, the skies part and the heavens rain down and you're like, yeah, that's what it is. And that was a huge turning point for me when I knew like, what is an empath and what does that mean for me? And oh my gosh, finally that makes sense. And I really know what my abilities are and the expression of them, and also what's their use in positive ways, and also what are the challenges, because the majority, of course, of getting to really understand what are our gifts and abilities and talents often comes from denying them, or being scared of them, or feeling like we can't be them because of all the different reasons, and then we finally go like, you know what, I just gotta be me. So I wanted to give just a little bit of a backstory there, that my life has been about discovering my empath self. And now I work with empaths and empath entrepreneurs, and I work as an empath. So let's get into a little bit more of, I want to just make a couple points here, and then also speak about, I want to give 3 reasons of why you are and why you are not an empath. So right now, there's 2 things that I see that are going on in the world, that this whole empath thing is coming up a lot. And I'm so happy that it is. It is so much something to celebrate, because it means we're finally starting to acknowledge the sensitives in the world, and those who have a connection to things that are unseen or unfelt by many others. And often we are the ones that are told that we got to grow a thicker skin, or there's many kind of more condescending things that are said about those who are not fitting into that left brain, highly intense, competitive, extroverted society that we live in. As much as we are evolving, we are still letting go of that old paradigm, and that has been the way things have been. So speaking of that paradigm, right now the world is pretty freaking crazy, and things are really, there's a lot of reasons to be hypersensitive right now. And because of this intense shift that we've been going through, particularly, I will say briefly, with the current state of what's going on in the American politics, many of us are waking up to this new way, this different way of possibility. And it is definitely like all of us are walking around. I won't say all of us, but many of us are walking around with our hair standing up on our, bodies. We're the hair standing up on the back of our necks, prickly skin. I'm sure you've probably felt that, where it's like people just feel like they've got a certain level of chaos around them because of the uncertainty and the things that are happening, and how quickly there is a big, very deep consciousness shift that is happening. But when we look at the world and we see everything, we don't believe that, because there's much evidence that shows us that we feel like we're going backwards. I'm not here to have a political conversation, but energetically that is a big thing that is making all of us extra sensitive right now. Here's the second point before I do a couple distinctions. I believe, it's my own little personal theory right now, that social media is creating more of a empath sensibilities or sensitivities. We have never been in a time on this planet where we have been able to see, feel, sense, and know so much more about so many other people's lives and countries and situations, that I believe because of social media, it is opening up our ability to connect to others, obviously through the very devices themselves, but emotionally, energetically, and spiritually, it's doing the same. Now, there's another side of this, is boundaries. There is a sense where people are getting opened, or they're getting intruded upon and not even realizing it because of that depth of visibility. We are also having to work with boundaries on a whole new level. So that, I can talk about that in another video, because I want to get to the 3 points that I feel are distinctions of what is an empath and what isn't. Okay, the first one is being an empath is different than being empathic. Many people are confusing the two and saying them interchangeably, and they're not the same thing. Feeling empathetic or feeling empathy is the sense of you're able to validate and really believe that somebody else's feelings are true. It's like that feeling if you feel for them. It's different than sympathy, because sympathy is like more like you feel bad. You feel bad for them, but you don't really feel it in you. You're kind of disconnected from it. Feeling empathy is feeling the emotions and feelings of somebody else as actually being valid and real. And, you don't say, oh, you shouldn't be feeling that. You're like, wow, that's a really, man, I feel you. That's where that comment comes from. Being an empath is different. I said feeling empathetic versus being an empath. Being an empath means that you feel other people's emotions, moods, sensations, whether they are in the physical form or whether they are non-physical. And you also feel the energies and emotions and moods and frequency of spaces and places. And there's much more to that. But I want to make that key distinction that feeling empathy does not make you an empath. Feeling empathic does not make you an empath. Empaths feel empathy and can be empathic, but there's a difference that empathy is not being an empath. Okay? So number 2 is that empaths have a very strong receptive and reflective sensitivities and sensibilities. And they can feel everything all around them, especially if they're not taking care of their energetic boundaries. There's a lot of people who are saying that they're feeling emotions, they're feeling anxious, and they don't know where it's coming from. And I'm not saying that those people are not empaths, but what I would like to make the distinction here is that feeling anxious or having anxiety or feeling like you're overwhelmed with emotions does not necessarily mean that you are an empath. It may mean that you are not doing some of your own work to help clear the obvious effects that you may be having from the intensity of life right now. There's this assumption that if you feel emotions, high, strong emotions, or if you feel a lot of anxiety, you're picking up on everything around you. And that may not be true. So this is a self-awareness thing. This is a kind of check yourself thing where sometimes people are calling themselves empaths because they're feeling overwhelmed by the world's emotions, when really they honestly need to look at their own life and they need to process their own stuff. And the reason why they may be feeling it more is because of that hypersensitivity that I was talking about earlier, about social media, and that people are waking up and becoming more sensitive, thank goodness. But there's a distinction between that feeling a lot of anxiety and emotions does not necessarily mean you're picking up on everybody else's stuff. Okay. And the last one I'd like to say here is that there's a difference between being an empath and being intuitive. You can be intuitive and not an empath. Most empaths are intuitive by nature. I believe most people are intuitive by nature. But when you look at pure intuition of what it is, intuition is simply knowing something or seeing something or getting information that you may not necessarily have any reason in your current reality or evidence of it to be able to say that it's true. It's the gut, it's the hunch, it's the sensing that somebody's going to call before they do. It's getting information for wherever sources that you get it from that is then shared. Like, for instance, a psychic is a type of intuitive. Now, the difference here is that the empath is their intuitive abilities also go into the sensate or the feeling of things. Whereas an intuitive, you may simply get information or flashes of information, but they don't have an emotional quality to them, or they don't have a transference quality where you're feeling the actual frequency of something else. You're just maybe getting information, and it's non-emotional. So an intuitive, you can be intuitive and not necessarily be an empath. Okay? So those are three distinctions that I'm hoping will help clear up a bit of the confusion around who is an empath and who isn't. I do have a course coming out called 7 Ways to Balance and Boost Your Energetic Self-Care for empaths, or also for those who are questioning that maybe I am and I need to clear up, I need to understand a bit more and want to help myself on the energetic level. So that is going to be available. You can find it on my website, and I have included the link in the little annotation thing, so you'll be able to find it there, and we can start getting more connected and working around your empath abilities, and also as an empathic entrepreneur. Okay, thanks so much. My name's Michelle from thesoultranslator.com. This has been Translation Tuesday, and I'll see you next week.